Geppetto was an old carpenter who lived alone, but always dreamed of having a son. One day, he carved a wooden doll with such care that he named it Pinocchio. When he finished the sculpture, Geppetto made a wish to heaven for the doll to become a real boy. That night, the blue fairy heard the wish and brought Pinocchio to life, who woke up moving and talking like a real child. Geppetto was amazed and moved, embracing Pinocchio with tears of joy. The blue fairy left an important warning. Pinocchio could become a real boy, but he needed to learn to be brave, honest, and generous. Jiminy Cricket was designated as Pinocchio's conscience to guide him and remind him of his responsibilities. Wanting to have a better life, Pinocchio left home to go to school. On the way, he met João Honesto and Gedeon, who told him about a magical place called Ilha dos Prazeres, where everything was fun and there were no rules. They convinced Pinocchio that school was boring and unnecessary, and that he should accompany them to Stromboli's puppet theater. Although Jiminy Cricket tried to warn him, Pinocchio, enchanted by the idea of fame and fun, decided to follow João Honesto and Gedeon. He got carried away by the promise of a more exciting life and ignored the advice. Arriving at Stromboli's theater, Pinocchio was received with great enthusiasm. Stromboli was fascinated by a wooden doll that spoke and moved like a real child. He quickly placed Pinocchio on stage, where he performed to an enchanted audience. Pinocchio's success on stage made him feel important and happy, but the euphoria was brief. When he asked to go home, Stromboli revealed that he was more interested in exploiting Pinocchio's profit potential than in his happiness. He locked Pinocchio in a cage, planning to use him to make money from his performances. The blue fairy returned to help Pinocchio, who was crying and regretting his bad choices. When asked why he hadn't followed the advice and gone to school, Pinocchio began lying to cover up his mistakes. Every lie he told made his nose grow even bigger. The blue fairy patiently explained that lying would only cause problems, and that honesty was the only way to achieve her goals. Pinocchio, embarrassed, confessed the truth about his actions. The blue fairy, with a gesture of compassion, freed him from the cage and warned him about the importance of being truthful and responsible. After being freed, Pinocchio made a new promise to be a good boy and decided to return home. However, when faced with a new temptation, he found a group of boys heading to Pleasure Island, a place where rules didn't exist. They were excited by the idea of unlimited fun and convinced Pinocchio to join them. Even though Jiminy Cricket tried to warn him, Pinocchio gave in to temptation and went with them. On Pleasure Island, Pinocchio indulged in irresponsible fun, not realizing that he was ignoring his responsibilities and commitments. On Pleasure Island, Pinocchio discovered that children who misbehaved were being turned into donkeys. He noticed that he was starting to transform too, with donkey ears and a tail. Scared and desperate, Pinocchio tried to flee the island, but the transformation was becoming irreversible for many of the boys. With Jiminy Cricket's help, Pinocchio managed to escape the island before it was too late. He was regretful and distressed at having ignored advice and responsibilities, and realized he needed to correct his mistakes immediately. After escaping from Pleasure Island, Pinocchio learned that Geppetto had gone in search of him and was trapped in the belly of a large whale. Determined to save his father, Pinocchio dived into the sea and found the whale. Inside the whale's stomach, Pinocchio found Geppetto, who was weak and tired. They got together and, with a brave plan, lit a fire inside the whale to force it to sneeze and release everyone from its stomach. The plan worked, and the whale expelled Pinocchio and Geppetto back into the sea. Pinocchio and Geppetto, after being expelled from the whale, faced a long swim to shore. Exhausted, they finally reached the beach and were greeted with enormous relief and happiness. Pinocchio promised himself that he would never disobey his responsibilities again and would dedicate himself to being a good boy. They returned home, where they were greeted with warm hugs and joy. Pinocchio had learned the importance of responsibility and honesty, and his journey was not in vain. Back at home, Pinocchio began to behave like a real boy. He dedicated himself to helping Geppetto with all his tasks and returned to school with determination. His transformation into a real boy was marked by acts of kindness and responsibility. He helped his neighbors, studied hard, and became an example to everyone around him. The blue fairy returned to congratulate him and confirmed that, due to his efforts and good conduct, he had become a real boy. Pinocchio's story ended with a happy ending. He and Geppetto lived happily and fulfilled, with Pinocchio now being a true boy who had learned the lessons of honesty and responsibility. His life was full of love, respect, and true friendships. He became a shining example of how being true to yourself and others can bring happiness and fulfillment. The moral of the story is that being honest and responsible is the key to a full and satisfying life. If you like the story of Pinocchio, subscribe to the channel and like the video for more exciting stories and incredible adventures. The moral of Pinocchio's story is that honesty, responsibility, and courage are essential to becoming a true and happy person. It is important to learn from your mistakes and strive to be better every day. If you like the story of Pinocchio, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video for more exciting stories and incredible adventures.